Very good afternoon to all the participants. This is Professor O.R.S. Rao, Vice Chancellor of ICFA University, Jharkhand, welcoming all of you to today's webinar, which is a part of the Churcha Month series on the protection of fundamental rights and the corresponding duty of government during COVID-19 pandemic. As you are aware, the ICFA University Jharkhand has started the Churcha Month series to build awareness among our students on the happenings in the industry and also the views of the industry experts on various matters of interest to all of us, including the students and faculty members. The COVID-19 crisis, it has taken a lot of toll across the world in terms of not only the severity, the intensity, and the length of time. In the last over 100 years, no other crisis was there, that was there for such a long time with such a long intensity across the world, which has affected the lives and the livelihoods of the people. So considering that, today's topic is something very, very important, which is of interest to all the citizens. As per the Indian Constitution, as per the Article 21, every one of the citizens of the country, there are certain fundamental rights that are there. And in this COVID-19 crisis, on how the rights are protected and what are the measures that are expected to be taken by the government. And there's a review and discussion on that. And today's panel discussion, we have with us the industry expert coming from the legal industry, is Mr. Amit Kumar Das. Amit Kumar Das is a practicing advocate in Jharkhand High Court, and he has over 20 years of experience and practice in sort of constitutional law, civil law, criminal law, mining, prevention of money laundering, FIRA, and a host of things. He is an empaneled lawyer in private corporates like Tata Motors and Tata Steel and ICICI Lombard, and public sector units like the Central Coalfields, BCCL, Hindustan Copper, and a lot of other companies like that. We are so fortunate to have such a practicing advocate with a vast experience in the field coming and, amidst of us to have a discussion on this matter. So my query or the question to the advocate Amit Kumar Das is, as per the Article 21 of the Indian Constitution, the right to life includes right to health and health care. In this perspective, what are the duties of the government to protect the citizens in this regard? Over to Mr. Amit Kumar Das.
Good afternoon, Professor Rao. Good afternoon, distinguished guests and my dear students. Now, for the legal fraternity also, it is one of the biggest challenge, that is COVID-19 pandemic. Previously, there were acts which made provisions for epidemic. There were acts which took care of disasters. Now, there is a basic difference between epidemic and pandemic. Epidemic is restricted to a particular area. Pandemic is for a larger area, undefined area. Just as we are facing now, the entire world is facing a crisis of pandemic. There were acts, laws which were prepared previously, but nobody could foresee such a situation which we are going through for the present. But the challenge has to be met, and we have to apply the existing laws in order to protect the interest. The interest, one of the right guaranteed under the Constitution of India is Article 21 of the Constitution of India, which says right to life. Right to life also includes right to health, right to livelihood, right to food. Now, the government who has declared a lockdown has a corresponding duty to ensure that health of the citizen in general are protected, best possible health care is provided, for which the state government as well as the central government is duty bound to provide all facilities to the deserving populations, more particularly the migrant laborers who are traveling, who have lost their job, who have lost their place to stay. They are traveling and they are facing various health hazards. Now, it is the duty, and the government has to discharge their duty by providing so. The Supreme Court of India has also recently, in one case, has intervened in the matter and are monitoring the issues relating to health and other issues related to migrant laborers, and passing necessary directions both to the state government and the concerned state government and the union government.
So, no, wonderful. In fact, thank you so much, for giving that explanation. See, while India as a country, like, is respected all over the world for protecting the lives of the people during this pandemic, so much so that, with a large country of 130 crores, so the number of people that are affected is very low compared with the Western countries. Same in the case with regard to the kind of a number of people that died, the fatalities. But at the same time, if you look at the Western world, be it United States or the Western Europe, they seem to have given more preference to the right to livelihood, because they are also democracies like India. And with the result, yes, while in the case of India, the protection of life seems to have taken some kind of a precedence. It was preferred, so when compared with the livelihood. What we have seen all over the world, maybe particularly from the Western kind of a world, seems to be, they seem to be sort of a protecting, more with regard to the livelihood. And in the Indian context, like, what we have been seeing is, like, a lot of people, they lost their livelihood. And with the result, sort of so many migrant labor. In fact, India is a country where the kind of the migrant labor, because, the employment potential is not the same across the regions. With the result, particularly in the eastern part of India, a lot of people have migrated to the western part or southern part of India, including the northern part. So all of them got stranded because the industry and construction and various things have come to a standstill. And with the result, yes, their mobility got restricted, and because of the lockdown. So, and so much so that, some people, like, they were sort of insisted on going back home, and they died on the way. So from this context, sort of my sort of, request to Mr. Amit Kumar Das is, sort of, if you can sort of tell us with regard to what is the role of government and what is the responsibility of government with regard to the livelihood, and particularly with regard to the fundamental sort of, the rights with regard to the right to movement and right to carry trade, profession and occupation. So what are your views, Advocate, Amit Kumar Das?
The right to profess trade and right to movement are the right under Article 19, which is subject to reasonable restrictions. The reasonable restrictions should be exercised under as permissible under law. But at the same time, these restrictions do not give power to the state government to suspend these rights. So there has to be a balance created. So far as the interest of the workmen are concerned, those migrant workmen who are said to have lost their job, there are various safeguards in the labor laws already there. Just like a person cannot directly be thrown out of any industry only because there is a lockdown announced by the government. There is a provision of retrenchment, a procedure has to be followed. For termination, a procedure has to be followed. If not, they have a remedy under law to approach the labor court. But that is on the later aspect of the matter. They sooner or later in future compensated. The crisis is how now their interest can be protected when they have already been thrown on the roads. They are actually on the road. In this situation, the directive principles of state policy cast an obligation upon the state government and the central government to ensure the interest and health of the workmen. And this has to be discharged by both the governments, more particularly the state government, because it is more a state subject than a central subject. And as I have already stated earlier, whenever there is an infringement of right, there is a right of constitutional remedies. Supreme Court in the public interest litigation has already taken cognizance of the matter and is monitoring. so as to ensure that the maximum benefits and protection is extended to such migrant laborers. But as you all know, India is a country of 130 crore population. Now, when such harsh decisions have taken, some persons momentarily have been put under suffering. But they have a remedy under law. Remedy can be availed. That may take some time, but the government is always under an obligation to protect the interests of such migrant laborers, and it is their constitutional right. They have a right of proper treatment, right to food, and that they cannot be deprived of, as such rights cannot be suspended.
Mr. Amit Kumar Das, while I agree with you, the Ministry of Home Affairs in the month of March, they have issued instructions to various industrial units asking them to pay the salaries of all the employees from the month of March onwards. And in this context, while from the humanitarian point of view, that was right, there are so many MSME units, like they don't have any income, they don't have any financial resources. So they were finding it very difficult to comply with that directive that has come from the Ministry of Human Affairs. And so much so, the MHA went to the extent of saying that they will penalize such of the units that are not complying with that. In that context, some of these units, they have approached the Supreme Court, and as you are aware, last week the Supreme Court has given a ruling saying that yes, you cannot force the MSME, which they can't afford it to that. So, what are your views into that? There, on one hand, we are talking of the rights of the citizens and the migrant, not even the migrant labor, and also the employees that are unable to attend the work because for their livelihood they have to get salary. And at the same time, there, you have got the MSME industry, they have got a problem with regard to the affordability. And while the government is saying that you have to pay the salaries, if they cannot pay that, so they, from the kind of a protection of the kind of a rights, what are your views on that, Mr. Amit Kumar Das?
Just I'll inform you that yesterday, the government has ultimately withdrawn that notification whereby it mandated the payment of wages to all the employees during this lockdown period. Because it is true, the industries, if they some in the small scale industries which do not have sufficient income to bear the expenses of wages for months together, such industries approach the Honorable Supreme Court. And the Honorable Supreme Court initially stayed it, and subsequently the government has now, by the notification dated 19th May 2020, withdrawn their earlier notification.
No, but so far as the in that context, Mr. Amit Kumar Das, so now, yes, as far as the citizen is concerned, as an aggrieved citizen, what is that I should do? Because I am working in a MSME industry.
Coming to that, yeah. Now, under the existing laws, existing labor laws, there are provisions which gives benefit to the laborers. Suppose an industry is under close down because of this lockout. Now they cannot just all of a sudden stop payment of wages. They have to take the permission of closing down the industry and pay retrenchment compensation to the workmen, which is different from wages.
Okay. So that means that I'm trying to understand.
They will get some.
Yeah. So now the ball shifts from the government of India to the state government to kind of to ensure that in lieu of the salaries or instead of salaries, they get some other compensation. Am I right in understanding that?
Yes, that is retrenchment compensation.
Retrenchment compensation they get, or sometimes maybe they are not retrenched, unable to go to work. Then what happens? They are not retrenched; they are still in service, but because they are unable to go to the office, what happens to them?
Yes, there are two things. Now, there are two kinds of, because under the Epidemic Diseases Act, the state government has the power to issue directions. State government has issued number of directions, different states. There are altogether 8 regulations presently functioning in India by the 8 states. Other states did not invoke such provisions. Now, there they have conditions, like in one state, they have a condition that every day, only 33% of the workmen will be allowed. In such situation, they have come out, if the workman attends the duty every third day, Because if 3% workforce is allowed, then every third day a workman will get his duty. He will get the wages for the entire period.
Okay. Okay. In fact, now
He
it is,
cannot say that he is coming to,
yeah, now in fact,
but they are unregulated.
yeah, very good. In fact, Mr. Amit Kumar Das, now it is paradoxical. Some of the state governments like Madhya Pradesh, recently they have been amending the labor laws because now the scene is shifting and, they want to attract more and more, private players to come into the industry. With the result, they are, changing the labor laws. So either kind of a morally, ethically or legally, what is your view on that? Because is this the time, to change the labor laws, without consulting the labor?
No, labor laws are always with the intention to protect the benefit of the labor force and to create a balance so that the employer who are in the higher bargaining power, they cannot put their own conditions detrimental to the interest of the workforce.
Yeah.
But we have also to keep in mind that industries have to survive. So
That's true.
the law
That is true.
made
That is,
balancing both
yeah, that is
that
true.
industries also survive, the interest of the laborers also gets protected.
Yeah. So in fact, today, in fact, we are very happy. We have got, among our participants, another leading advocate, Mr. Pridip Bhattacharya. He has been a practicing advocate. It's a pleasant sort of a surprise for me that, he is participating. So may I request, your view, sir? I have enabled, your audio and video. Mr. Pridip Bhattacharya, on both these things, points what we discussed, what are your considered views on this?
Yes, sir, very nice. I've heard him and wonderfully has explained the point. But one thing still my mind says, what is the definition of migratory labor? Labor, interstate labor. It is a fundamental right. How this word is being now used, migratory labor. First of all, if that definition in the labor law, I was pondering on, but I didn't get that. If the new definition has been post-COVID-19 definition. So if that would be there, so state amendments are necessary then. But I think that it is purely wrong state. Yes, sir is correct that industry must be safe. But at the same time, this new definition, migratory labor, where from it has been collected, I don't find in the dictionary.
So similarly, Mr. Pradip Bhattacharya, like there has been a raising debate with regard to the life and livelihood, or some quarters they say life versus livelihood. So, sort of, what are your views in that? Because the Western world, they have taken a considered view that livelihood is more important, whereas considering that, sir, in fact, just listen to me. Considering that, like our Oriental philosophy from the East is the life is more important than the livelihood. First life comes, then the livelihood. Yes. So, because of that, countries like India, from the eastern part of the kind of a world, we said life is more important, and then only livelihood comes. But the Western part, if you see, they have given more preference to the livelihood. In fact, as a matter of fact, in the United States, in several of the states, the lockdown is not even implemented. Even though lakhs and lakhs of people are affected into that. So now, what is your view on that? Looking at it as a democracy, both of them are democracies. They also have got similar kind of a rights there. So what is your view on that, Mr. Pradip Bhattacharya?
Sir, so far the democracy is concerned, first point is that, yes, it is true. Life is the only truth. When in the year 1931, on the matter, there were long debates, life and livelihood. This is not the first time debate is in the throughout the world. It is a long debate. Both are supplementary and complementary to each other. Okay. Both should simultaneously run. Okay. It's true. Okay. But to safeguard is also required. Okay. So lockdown should be there, but somewhat relaxation so far this livelihood is concerned. That's very important. Both should go side by side. Okay. Otherwise, if there will be no any work, ultimately work and livelihood both are intermittent position. Absolutely. So both are required for certain restrictions.
Absolutely.
I think, sir, Mr. Amit Kumar would also explain on this particular. Both are complementary and supplementary to each other.
Okay, wonderful. Because I think there's nothing like they don't compete against each other. Sort of they complement each other, yes, livelihood. The life and livelihood rights I think they have to complement
Yeah.
each other rather than, sort of one against another into that. So good, sir. Yeah. So the third aspect I would like to sort of request the views of Advocate Amit Kumar Das is the government, both in the government of India and also some of the state governments, they have been announcing several programs, policies, and relief measures for uplifting the livelihood in various ways, whether it is in terms of the giving the ration or in terms of the various aspects into that. Sort of here, what are your considered views, like with regard to the implementation of this kind of measures and a fair and equitable implementation of that, in case there is a citizen that is aggrieved, like in fact, a citizen, sort of what is the kind of recourse he has got with regard to implementation of this kind of relief measures? Is it a right or is it something like a benefit that is given? What are your views on that, Mr. Amit Kumar Das?
Sir, before replying to this question, one thing which Mr. Bhattacharya had pointed out, I just like to reply. There is an old act of 1979, that is Interstate Migrant Worker Regulation of Employment and Condition of Service Act, which provides protection of certain rights and provisions for migrant workers.
Okay.
The word migrant workers have come from that act. Interstate Migrant Workmen Regulation on Employment and Conditions of Service Act 1979.
Okay.
Now, coming to your question, state government has announced various policies. These policies and these benefits are in discharge of their responsibilities to ensure the protection of right under Article 21. Now, suppose these benefits are not extended or certain person is aggrieved of not getting the benefits, then he has a right under Article 32, right to constitutional remedies. He can approach directly the Supreme Court or he can put a writ application before the Honorable High Court. There has been movement restrictions. Therefore, there was difficulties for the citizen to approach the court during this lockdown.
Okay.
Considering this, the Honorable Supreme Court had issued guidelines, both for itself as well as for the different high courts, permitting e-filing of the cases and e-hearing of the cases.
Okay.
Today, if a citizen is aggrieved, they can directly send an email to the concerned email ID of the High Court, which is available in the public domain, and institute a case, because any violation or any short service of any of the assurances given by the government is an infringement of right guaranteed under Article 21 of the Constitution of India, which gives a right to any citizen to approach directly the High Court under Article 226 or to the Honorable Supreme Court under Article 32 of the Constitution of India.
Well, wonderful, sir. Sir, in fact,
and in fact, both our High Court,
Okay.
in fact, our High Court is also monitoring and entertaining PILs and passing directions. Almost every week, the case is being listed and reports are being sought for from the state government and the Indian government. And the Supreme Court is also hearing the larger interest nationwide in a PIL instituted before it.
Wonderful, sir. Wonderful. So, in fact, Mr. Amit Kumar Das, a short while ago, referred to the migrant labor. They are all covered by that 1979 Act. So, as per that, when there is a migrant labor, let's say from the Jharkhand or Bihar, who is the responsibility to ensure that the migrant labor from Bihar or Jharkhand who have gone to Maharashtra, to bring them back, to rehabilitate them, whose responsibility is that? Is it, with the government of India, or is it with the, what you call the local government, or is it a combination of both of them?
No, it is a primary responsibility of the local government where they are working.
Okay.
Because in India, there is no dual citizenship. There is one citizenship. Every Indian has a right to migrate to any part of the country, settle there, work for gain over there. And the responsibility is on the concerned state government to ensure and protect their rights. Now, suppose a laborer has migrated from Jharkhand to Maharashtra and working for gain in Maharashtra. He has been rendered homeless. He has been thrown out of job. The duty is of the enforcement agencies of that particular state where he is working to protect his interests.
Okay. So, in fact, that's where I think there has been, some kind of a confusion or a dichotomy. like as you are aware, in India, the ration cards are distributed at state level. And what we have been seeing in the newspapers is a lot of migrant labor, they do not have the local ration cards. While they are working in Maharashtra, they are working in southern part of India, sort of the ration cards are issued by the government, where, they are domiciled ordinarily. So with the result, like most of these people, the migrant labor, we are given to understand, they were unable to derive the benefits out of that. It is just very recently, sort of during the lockdown, sort of now the government of India has made an announcement that as far as the ration cards are concerned, they said, the ration cards, they have got a national character, national characteristic. It is just only 2 days back they clarified. Until then, when all these relief measures, they were all being given on the basis of the ration card, and also in some cases the problems have been with the Aadhaar card. Aadhaar card also, even though it is issued by the government of India, because it gives a domicile of state. So that's where there was a lot of confusion with regard to the relief measures and the beneficiaries. Sort of a lot of beneficiaries could not get the benefits because they don't have a local ration card. And when they see the Aadhaar card says that, this person belongs to some other state. So until the clarification came from government of India, and also just now, the government also has understood the problem, and they said, the people without ration card, they said they will start supplying some ration to them. This is a new provision that has come. So in this, what is your view? Like, in fact, if we are looking at, the state and center, like, is the state government right in saying that, like, we distribute this, we give the relief on the basis of the ration cards that are issued by my state government? You don't have a ration card, or you got an Aadhaar card, and as per that you are not a domicile of the state. So what are your views on that, Mr. Amit Kumar Das?
See, right to equality is one of the fundamental rights.
Okay.
Now, wherever any policy is to be made, one has to see that there is no discrimination.
Okay.
If the state government has made policy on the basis of ration card, then there is a discrimination. There are two classes. One class having ration card, another class not having ration card.
Okay. Yeah.
Now, wherever the discrimination, there has to be an nexus of the discrimination with the object sought to be achieved.
Yeah.
Object sought to be achieved by this policy is to provide relief to the deprived category. Therefore, that discrimination, in my opinion, was illegal.
Okay.
And therefore, they have now rectified their mistakes after realizing that, yes, they cannot deprive a person only because he doesn't have a ration card or he doesn't have an Aadhaar card of local address.
Okay.
Because any discrimination made on the basis of ration card or made on the basis of their descent or on the basis of their permanent address is discriminatory per se.
Okay. So hypothetically, in all these cases, even though some rectification has happened now, sort of, prior to this, any of these aggrieved citizens could have approached the judiciary at that point of time. Now that the clarification has come and it is rectified, sort of supposing it has not happened, hypothetically, a citizen could have sort of, taken the help of the judiciary to rectify that?
In fact, it has been done with the help of the judiciary only.
Okay.
What has happened?
Okay, I think after the PIL was filed only, I think, okay.
After PILs were filed, almost all high courts are in session of the PILs.
Okay.
Many NGOs have come on their behalf to.
I see.
The issue was issued.
Okay. So that means that this rectification has happened due to the kind of the role and intervention of the judiciary itself through the PILs. Okay, wonderful. In fact, we are so happy to see the contribution of the judiciary in protecting these sort of people's rights into that. So, Mr. Pradeep Bhattacharya, do you have any view on this with regard to the beneficiaries and what the state government of India is giving? Yeah.
That's why, as earlier I told, that the migratory labor is not well defined. That's why the racial problem is there.
Okay.
And why the rightly pointed out is the constitutional dichotomy. You have very rightly pointed out that constitutional dichotomy is there. It's fact. That's why migratory labor is not well defined.
Okay.
That's why this problem is now being raised.
I see. I see.
So even the government, state government is also not taking proper care of this due to the constitutional dichotomy of exact definition of migratory labor. That's the big problem.
Okay.
That is not defined. That's the big problem.
Okay. So to that extent, possibly I think there's a scope for redefinition or review of the definition of migratory labor itself into that. So
I think, sir, COVID-19 would bring major amendments in so many walks of life. So many syllabus would be changed. So many syllabus would be changed.
Sir,
Even the university syllabus would be changed also. You see?
So, talking of the migrant labor, like another kind of point of view that is coming up is like the industries, be it manufacturing, be it construction, across the country, a lot of states, they are dependent on the migratory labor. If you take the construction industry in the southern part of India, be it in terms of Telangana, Andhra going up to Kerala, or for that matter, manufacturing industry in terms of Gujarat and Maharashtra, they are highly dependent on the migrant labor. It could be the corporate, it could be their ancillaries or the entire supply chain. Now that this migrant labor, they have gone back to their native places, like after some time when the industry opens up, do you see a role or a duty by the government, either by the government of India or by the states, or is it the responsibility of the employers, or is it the responsibility of the citizens to go back? Because now, like they got destabilized, they don't have a job, they don't have a livelihood. Because of that, they have come back to their native place. Maybe it could be 3 months, it can be 4 months, the industry comes back. So at that point of time, sort of what is going to be the scenario and what do you think, are the roles? Mr. Amit Kumar Das, what are your views on that?
My view is that it is more of a need-based industry. Now, when the industries did not look for this workman, they had thrown them out of service. No sooner there was a direction to close down the industries, and these people got jobless and homeless. Now they have to give more incentives in order to lure them back.
Okay.
Because it is need. The migrant workers also need jobs for survival. Naturally, they might not be having any alternative source of livelihood in their own states or home states, and therefore they had migrated.
Okay.
But there is one more thing. The Act of 1979, that is Migrant Worker Regulation Act, that act provided for a registration of such workmen, license to the industries who wanted to hire the migrant employees. These were not being followed.
Okay.
One of the reasons for such which has resulted is that proper non-implementation of that act.
Okay.
Had those acts been followed, the state would have got the records of the workmen, the industrialists who have hired them, so that their interests would have been better protected in such.
Okay. So there, while the provisions are there are some issues with regard to the implementation of that. So I think possibly
implementation of
that. So Mr. Amit Kumar Das, I think if you can come to the sort of a center of your this thing, your full picture can be sort of seen. Yeah, fine. I think that is good into that. So, in fact, I'm so happy that the help from Mr. Amit Kumar Das and also Advocate, Pradeep Bhattacharya, our students and all the participants, they could get a very clear views with regard to the Article 21 of the Indian Constitution. What are the kind of the rights, right to sort of a life, right to health and healthcare, and what are the duties of government, sort of in that regard, and also with regard to any likelihood of whether it is a conflict or whether in terms of preponderance of the right to life and right to livelihood, where with regard to right to movement and right to the carry and the trade, sort of that also we got clarified. We have understood that they don't contest, but they complement each other. Similarly, we also got a very good clarity with regard to the role of the government with regard to equitable and fair distribution of the relief measures. So there they cannot discriminate on any ground. So any rules and regulations that they have, they should make sure that nobody is discriminated into that. Sort of we are very, very happy to hear that. After having said that, like all of our students are eagerly, they are all waiting, and they are all the students of BBLLB. They are all the students of LLB in the various years. All of them have passion to build a career in law. So my question, first to Mr. Amit Kumar Das is, sort of, you have got, a lot of experience, and, you have been practicing in so many areas, like starting with, constitutional law, civil, criminal, mining, so many things that you are doing with regard to the financial regulation. What is your advice to our students, Mr. Amit Kumar Das, with regard to the career? What kind of a career do you think they should make? Do you have some view on that?
See, law has many career options. One can build career in the corporate sector. There are government jobs also where LLB persons are directly recruited. Even in the Indian Army, every year LLB students are being recruited.
Yeah.
Thereafter, the second option, litigation.
Yeah.
Where I belong to the litigation sector. Litigation, if you want to pursue litigations, there is a small struggle period. So that is a learning period also.
Okay.
Substantive law, the students learn in the colleges.
Okay.
Thereafter, to learn the practical law, you have to practice for some time under some senior, or you have to learn the process and learn the implementation of the law, how it is to be implemented in the courts.
Okay.
For that, there is a stagnant period, there is a struggle period. However, if left to me, my opinion is one should always try for litigation. Lawyer should appear before the court, but they have other options also. A person who is not comfortable in the court proceedings, he may go for corporate side, he may go for government jobs.
Okay.
And even in job also there is, and because a lot of new law colleges are coming up. So many students do LLB, then they do LLM, and they apply for NET. And appearing NET with the education career.
So there, every student has to decide for himself or herself. There is something called, they want to have a safety net for the job, or something, maybe where, they take a risk, and there's a lot of enterprise that they do. They have to work harder and they can come up. I think, sort of both the choices are there. It depends on the person.
There is no risk at all. If they work hard in any field,
yeah, that's
either litigation or if they work hard, hard work will pay.
Absolutely, absolutely. You have to work harder. You have to work harder and you have to strive harder. So, Mr. Pradeep Bhattacharya, in fact, you have got an illustrious career of over 50 years in the legal field. What is your advice to our young students with regard to their career?
Yes. First of all, very nicely told by our sir, Mr. Amit sir, that you'll have to take risk, because no risk is the greater risk. No risk is the greater risk. So he has very rightly advised that. And second thing is that law has got elaborate scope, because what is argument being the court? Not fight, but the best way of service, social service even. And if you do social service, definitely dividend would come here from.
Wonderful.
So law is a very nice career.
Yeah.
From my experience, I say, right from lower court, right from lower court to high court to Supreme Court, I am running. And very recently, sir, very recently, one thing I say, there was one contract, because sir has pointed this point, the 226 article, that's very important. But 226 application, there needs, if there is no any alternative legal scope, then 226 would not come. You very rightly pointed out that it's very important. Even though 226 and 227 article are very helpful. So I would suggest my friends, younger friends who are coming, yes, you take the risk, otherwise it will be the greater risk in your life. Every time. Why is not law required? Litigation. Another point, very nicely, yes, sir has taken the very deep point, litigation. Without litigation, truth cannot be revealed. Litigation should be there, otherwise you cannot approach the truth. So litigation by way of legal practice is the best practice. Money earning also, of course, time is required.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, I can see from the faces of both of you. On one hand, we have got Mr. Amit Kumar Das, who is into the 40s. Then we have got Mr. Pradeep Bhattacharya, into the late 60s or early 70s. and with a illustrious career of more than 50 years, Mr. Pradip Bhattacharya, I see him running from Dhanbad to Ranchi to Delhi every week, and I can see, I think, it's a great career, and, there's a lot of satisfaction, not only in terms of the professional kind of satisfaction, you also do a lot of service to the humanity. And in fact, Mr. Pradip Bhattacharya is also doing a PhD in a very excellent, noble area with regard to the kind of equitable kind of, the judiciary health, with regard to the sort of the justice, delayed is justice, denied. So that's where he is doing a lot of work, and we're really great. So now, with your permission, Mr. Amit Kumar Das, can we allow our students to ask a few questions? Our students are all ready to go. Maybe, something like about 4 or 5 students of ours would like to ask some questions. So now over to our faculty members and students. So from your side, you can identify yourself and ask a question. So
yes, sir. Some students are identified. They have said their queries earlier also. So Ravi ji, are you here? Ravi ji.
No, leave it to them. Alok ji, I think leave it to them. Who's our student wants to ask? Yeah, please ask. Yeah.
Sir, I have a question, sir. Myself, Kumar Sambhav.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Of LLV student.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hello.
Yeah.
Sir, yes. I have a question. In view of protecting right of laborers, what are the merits and demerits of amendment currently being made in labor law by the various governments?
See, wherever you have to judge whether the merit and demerit, you have to see the particular amendment, the object with which such amendment is being brought. Every act or any piece of legislation has an object. You have to see the object. If the object is for protection of interest of the workmen, it is in consonance with the Constitution. If any amendment is not in consonance with the Constitution, you have always a right to challenge it, saying that it is ultra vires the Constitution of India.
Wonderful.
Any law which is being enacted or amended has to be in conformity with the Constitution, or should be within the constitutional framework of the country. It cannot be beyond that.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah. Any other questions? Good.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, Saurabh from BBLLB, sir.
Yeah.
Saurabh?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Am I audible, sir?
Yeah, you are audible. Please.
Yes.
Sir, this is question to Amit, sir. Sir, as we know that, sir, in the present circumstances, we are witnessing the exercise of excessive power on the part of administrative authority. For the say, sir, what are the suitable legal remedy available for the citizen, sir?
See, being a student of law, you have to what are the powers under which provisions of the act it is being just knowledge I'll tell you. Presently, the central government exercising powers under the National Disaster Management Act. The state government corresponding are exercising powers under the epidemic disease. Both the acts have certain penal and both the acts have certain restrictions. This apart, the state government is also powers under 144 CRPC, where there is a corresponding penal provision 188 of IPC. Okay. Wherever being a student of law, you feel that this power has been exercised by any authority. Such excessive exercise of power or any excessive power contradictions of the law is always amenable to judicial scrutiny.
Yeah.
And such actions are always subject before court of. However, certain immunities have also been granted. For example, under the Epidemic Disease Act, if any action has been exercised in good faith, then that cannot be made a subject matter of any.
No. No,
That power is there. Of the act.
Yeah. So, any other questions?
Okay, Ravinder, please.
Hello, sir.
From LLB.
From myself, Ravindra Narayan Singh, just LLB beginner. One small query, sir. What are those effective lessons through which the economic right of citizens can be well protected during this COVID-19 situation?
See, during COVID-19 situation, the primary basic right is under Article 19(1)(g) of the Constitution of India. Now, in furtherance to that, there are other laws. For example, if there is a workman, he has a protection under the Industrial Dispute Act, Payment of Wages Act, Payment of Gratuity Act, Payment of Bonus Act. Similarly, the persons who are the industrialists, they also have a right. They have a right to close down their industry under compelling circumstances by following the due procedure of law. For example, they can apply for seek permission for retrenchment, for closure of their factories. There are other acts also which gives right to claim subsidies announced by the state government from time to time for the benefit and for the purpose of somehow maintaining these industries, and other subsidies granted to the industrialist as well as the corresponding benefits to the workmen. All this has to be scrutinized properly. All the notifications which are being issued by the government, state government and central government has to be read in consonance with the provisions of the Parent Act, and thereafter the benefits have to be derived.
Very good. Any other questions from the students or the faculty members?
Sir, hello. Sir, one question is from my side.
Yes, sir. Ajay sir from LLB.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
This is Ajay Singh, LLB. I wanted to know, sir, that this mining of major mineral is governed by central government. Yes. So, in that case, whether state government can impose any cess or any taxes in lieu of COVID-19 or major mineral mining?
No. So far as minerals are concerned, the state government is entitled only to royalty. Under the Mineral MMDR Act, Mines and Mineral Regulation and Development Act, the state government is entitled to get royalty for the minerals which are being mined from its territories. Now that, besides that royalty and other taxes, there is no other enactment which empowers the state government for the present to levy any additional cess for COVID-19.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Any other question? Hojifa, you want to ask?
No, sir, I have a question, sir.
Okay. Rana Singh from LLB. Please.
Good evening, sir. I am a student of LLB. My question is, all preventive measures like lockdown, closures, or others are for protection of life. But how does the loss of livelihood because of that measures ensures the protection of life? And for and second question is for retrenchment compensation and other benefits. How long it takes for the laborers to get the benefit?
Yes, there are two questions you have. Now, so far as lockdown is concerned, see, government has two responsibilities. First, responsibility is to protect the life of the citizens. Second, the protection of livelihood of the citizens. Now, the importance government has to choose which has to be given more importance. Certainly, life of mass has to be given a preference to the livelihood of a selected few. But at the same time, their interest is also required to be protected and a balance is required to be created. Therefore, the state government has been issuing directions in exercise of their powers from time to time. Initially, in order to protect and ensure that livelihood is not lost, the state government had issued a direction that all the employees will continue getting their wages irrespective of closure of the industries. Later on, it had to be reviewed because the interest of the industrialists were also required to be protected. Now, therefore, the employees as on date will be entitled to the other benefits available under the existing laws, which includes retrenchment benefit. The retrenchment benefit has to be given by the industrialist, and there is an implementing agency. Just like labor department, every state has a labor department, a labor inspector, a labor superintendent, a deputy labor superintendent, who have been given different powers under the Industrial Dispute Act. Now, these are the enforcement agencies who have to implement and ensure that where has been a close down of industries, certain industries are still running, certain industries have been closed down. Where there has been a close down of industries, the industrialists pay the retrenchment benefit, and that retrenchment benefit is recoverable as areas of land revenue. A bank account of the industrialist can be attached, and that amount can be recovered. If they fail, then the workmen through their union or directly can appeal labor courts. Labor court will enforce those rights.
So thank you, sir.
Yeah, good.
So, hello.
Yes, Hojifa from BBLLB. Puchiye.
Yes, sir. Good evening, sir. This is Rafa from BBLLB. My question is, what are the consequences for being quarantined according to Disaster Management Act 2005? As the lockdown has been implemented and we have to be in quarantine during this pandemic period, so what are the main benefits, and what are the measures which government have taken or government will take according to law for being quarantined for the people?
See, government is under the obligation to ensure proper health and sanitation to the employees. Now, to the citizens. Now, quarantine means to contain a disease which is otherwise spreading. Means a measure taken by the government to stop the spread of a disease. Quarantine means isolation. A patient or a person who is likely to have suffered or contacted the COVID-19 virus, he will be isolated from the mass during the period that virus remains active in his body, so that it prevents its contamination or its spread to the mass. This is called isolation or a quarantine. So this is a measure taken by the government only in the interest of the public. There is no benefits given to the person who is quarantined, but at the same time, during quarantine period, the person has a right to get a proper place to stay in the quarantine centers, proper food and proper medical treatment during the period of quarantine in the quarantine centers, which is being ensured by the state government.
So, can I ask one more question? A small question.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. So, which are all the sections which mostly deals with lockdown pandemic period in according to Disaster Management Act? Which are the main?
I'll tell you.
Yes, sir.
Disaster Act gives power to the central government as well as the state government. National Disaster Management Authority is a body created under the Act, which is chaired by the Prime Minister of the country. And secondly, the National Committee is being created, which is headed by the Home Minister of the country. Therefore, the MHA is passing orders in exercise the powers under those provisions of the Act. At the same time, there is one Epidemic Diseases Act 1897, which is also being invoked, which gives exclusive power to the state government only to make regulations and take necessary steps in order to contain an epidemic. The word used under this act also is containment. Unless you contain it, the virus will continue spreading. And after containment, only antibodies are prepared, and thereafter the effect of virus becomes minimum. So those steps are being taken by the state government for the purpose of containment. The central government is taking on larger decisions.
Thank you very much, sir. We are closing here the question because of the paucity of time, and we would like to thankful on behalf of faculty member and student. You are addressing all questions very nicely, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Sir, Rishi sir, I'm hand over to you.
There are lots of questions. I can see so many people raise their hands. We've got Said Hozaifa and so many of our students wanting to ask questions. Unfortunately, I think, because of paucity of time, we wanted to limit this entire discussion for 1 hour. I think that was the only thing. Because of that, we had to restrict that. I would like to thank Mr. Amit Kumar Das as well as Mr. Pradeep Bhattacharya. Mr. Pradeep Bhattacharya, he came as a pleasant surprise participating in today's panel discussion. So both the panelists, I thank you very much for sharing your views. All of our students and all of our faculty members, they got benefited a lot in this process. And my request is, if all of you can switch on your video, we'll just take a snap. Because unlike our normal snaps, today, in fact, the entire world is changing. Because our way of life, now we have to be more comfortable with a digital, a virtual life. So as a part of virtual life, I think we will take a virtual photograph, and it's a virtual meeting that has happened, a virtual conference. So my request to all of you is, please switch on your videos so that we'll be able to take a snap. I think those of you that do it, including Alok Kumar, Alok, and all of you, Ajay Singh, Akash Kumar, Anjali Sinha, Ankit Raj, all of you, just sort of switch on the remaining. Just
switch on the remaining student. Are you seeing?
Yeah. So I think all of you must switch on for just a few minutes. So Chandar Kumar Ojai there, Prem Prakash. So Rabindra Narayan Singh, SK Bharadwaj, all of you, please. So it's okay if somebody sort of has some issue there, we don't force you. Good. Very good. And Pradeep Bhattacharya ji. So Rumna ji, if you can facilitate, that would be great. Divya Utkarsh.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, jaldi, so that we can conclude this session and then move on. So in fact, Syed, I'm sorry we could not take your question because you are very keen to ask a question, but we could not. Please. Some more. SK Bharadwaj, Abdul Halim, yes sir, Aspire, Ajay Singh, Muskan. जल्दी ऑन कर दीजिए. गुड. Yeah, good. Tejashwini Neha.